Today I want to show you how you can write and design an amazing Deuteragonist character in your manga. Let's get straight into the video. Why is a Deuteragonist character so important? Well, a Deuteragonist helps to support the protagonist in the story. They are the ones who show the main attributes of the protagonist, and it can help to make the protagonist more compelling as a character. The purpose of a Deuteragonist character, or a secondary main character, is to support the protagonist in the story. As your protagonist goes on their journey in your story, it's important to have this secondary main character as someone who can help highlight the main attributes of the protagonist and help the protagonist in their journey. So what makes up a good Deuteragonist? A Deuteragonist character will be a combination of elements from the protagonist. So before you begin creating your Deuteragonist, you really need to understand your protagonist character. Now let's go further into details on how you can create a Deuteragonist character in your manga. Number 1. Give them a goal that directly relates to the protagonist's goal. The Deuteragonist's main goal needs to integrate well with the protagonist's goal. Typically, in a manga, the protagonist's goal will usually be the main goal of the story. And as your protagonist is working to achieve their main goals, the Deuteragonist needs to have a goal that will align well with that. The Deuteragonist's journey needs to integrate well with the protagonist's journey. Both goals need to align, and as your protagonist is working towards the main goals in the story, your Deuteragonist's goals need to also be resolved and worked on throughout the course of that story. By solving the main goal of the story, the Deuteragonist's goal also needs to be resolved. For example, if the protagonist's main goal is to defeat a really bad villain, maybe the Deuteragonist has also been affected by the villain in the story in some negative way. And so by the protagonist solving their goal, it also resolves the Deuteragonist's goal as well. You need to ensure that you give your Deuteragonist a goal that when the main character's goal is resolved, the Deuteragonist's goal is also resolved as well. Number 2. Give them the opposite traits of the main character. So the traits that the protagonist does not have need to be shown in the Deuteragonist character. So by giving the Deuteragonist opposite traits of the main character, you make them a foil of the protagonist, someone who can help to show those aspects that the protagonist does not have. So let me give you some examples of opposing traits that your Deuteragonist character may have. Your protagonist may be someone who's really bold and confident, and your Deuteragonist may be someone who is rather shy, nervous, or timid. Your protagonist may be someone who really rushes into action without fully thinking it through, and your Deuteragonist may be someone who's more logical and likes to think a lot before taking action. In this instance, they may be the voice of reason for your protagonist. Your protagonist may be someone who can be very serious or stern, and your Deuteragonist may be someone who is more comical. So think about how you can give your Deuteragonist traits that are opposite to the protagonist and how you can use this to create more interesting characters overall. Number 3. Make them stand well on their own. Your Deuteragonist character needs to stand well on their own regardless of the protagonist. You need to ensure that you develop your Deuteragonist character in a way that they are still interesting characters. Think about their hobbies, their traits, their personality, their backstory, and their purpose in your story. They should be very interesting characters on their own, regardless of the protagonist in your story. Number 4. Show how they reflect the hidden traits in your protagonist. A Deuteragonist character does not only show the opposite traits of the protagonist, but they can also reflect hidden traits or hidden underlying thoughts in the protagonist. To better show this, let me give you an example. Maybe your protagonist on the surface is someone very confident and determined. But under the surface, maybe they are really afraid of making a mistake, so they pretend to be overly confident to make up for that. And then you bring in your Deuteragonist character, who may be someone who makes mistakes a lot. Maybe they are really clumsy and they don't really think things through and they make mistakes, but they learn from those things and it makes them into a better character. And then in this instance, maybe the protagonist sees that this character makes mistakes and accepts themselves regardless. And that helps the protagonist to look at those hidden traits in themselves and realize that they don't need to be overly confident to hide those things and that they can accept themselves for who they are. So in this instance, the Deuteragonist is someone who shows those hidden traits that are hidden in the protagonist. And creating that kind of reflection is a great way to create a more meaningful Deuteragonist in your story. Number 5. Give them a design that suits the protagonist's design. The design of the Deuteragonist character needs to work well with the protagonist. After all, it's very likely that you will show these two characters together a lot, so their designs both need to be purposeful for the story and also look really good together. To better show you this, let's draw something together. As you can see, I'm looking at elements in the protagonist outfit and sort of transforming those elements in the Deuteragonist character's design. I'm taking inspiration from those aspects and turning it into something new. Try and break down the protagonist design into smaller shapes or elements, and then try turning it into something different in the Deuteragonist character's design. You can also learn from the colour wheel and choose a colour scheme that suits both characters. Analogous colours are colours that are opposite each other on the colour wheel, and so you can make the protagonist outfit one colour and then the Deuteragonist colour the other colour beside each other on the colour wheel. This can create a more calm or aesthetic look. Then you have complementary colours, which are colours opposite each other on the colour wheel. By using this kind of colour scheme, it can create a more bolder look. You can also choose colours in the same hue on the colour wheel. By incorporating elements of your protagonist design in your Deuteragonist and using the colour wheel to help you better colour it, you can create a more aesthetic look for your characters' designs. Number 6. Ensure that they have their own perspective, thoughts, and feelings. Even though you're taking a lot of inspiration from the protagonist for your Deuteragonist character's design, this doesn't mean that they need to be exactly like the protagonist. And in fact, it's so important for you to give your Deuteragonist character their own perspective, thoughts, and feelings. It's the Deuteragonist's job to show a different perspective than the protagonist. The protagonist will be looking at the story in one way, and the Deuteragonist needs to have opposing views at some point in order to show a different perspective in the story. They need to stand apart from the protagonist and be a really well-written character on their own. So take some time to consider what kind of character you really want to create and how this character can stand apart from the protagonist in a unique way. And number 7, show how they can work with or against the protagonist. Continuing on from the previous point, a Deuteragonist may not always agree with the protagonist. And in fact, in some cases, they may even work against the protagonist if they have a differing opinion. But the purpose of this is that the Deuteragonist character and the protagonist need to have their differences in order to learn from each other. This character type needs to help the protagonist grow on their character journey. And so you need to think about the times when the Deuteragonist may work with or against the protagonist. In some cases, they may need to go on their own path or experience things in their own ways. But by the very end of the story, they need to sort of come to terms with things in their own way in order to resolve the main goal of the story and to show how both of these characters have grown in really amazing ways over the course of your book. Thank you so much for joining me in today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let me know in the comment section down below. Let me know more about what kind of Deuteragonist characters you're creating because I'd really love to hear about it. Make sure to visit my website for courses, free resources, and learning materials. Also check out the trailer for my upcoming manga Having Faith, which will be available for pre-order later this year. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope you have an amazing day and I'll see you in the next video.